Let's go to Jennifer in Birmingham. What is up, Jennifer?
Hey, Dr. John.
How are you?
Thanks for taking my call. I'm doing. I just want you to know, too, that your show, I'm sure lots of people tell you this, but your show does make a difference, and it's made me take, a long, hard look at my life.
Well, number one, nobody tells me that, so thank you. Even my wife is like, can you let's mow lawns. Let's have a family lawn mowing business. Your show's terrible. So thank you so much. It really means a lot to me, and you're the one doing the work, and so I'm proud of you for, leaning in and making some hard changes in your life. Talk directly on your phone, because I want to make sure I don't miss this. What's going on in your world?
Okay. I'm going to make it short and sweet or cut right to the point. I grew up in an abusive household. I heard, obviously, by listening to you already, I've heard about your ACEs scale, so I'm a 6 on that. Ooh. And now 15 years out of that, leaving that home and everything, I'm now a single mom of 2 great girls. And my question to you is it too late for me to heal from my childhood trauma?
Oh, what an awesome question, Jennifer. Did you know almost nobody asks that question? That's incredible. Good for you. I can answer that question, but for the sake of radio, can we dig into some of the past stuff? Are you okay with that?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
The simple answer is yes. And I'm so glad that you asked that. Absolutely 1,000,000% yes. So tell me about your childhood.
Well, I had, my biological father was absent. So basically from, most of my first couple years, it was just me and my mom. And while she was trying to get her life together, I was bounced around to different family homes. And then she met a guy, married him. He adopted me, and they have a very volatile relationship. There were, obviously, there was physical abuse, verbal abuse. My mom didn't really stand up for herself. So as the only child for almost the first 10 years of my life, I felt the need to insert myself because, that's my mom. She shouldn't take that. And then there were some times where, I don't know if she meant to or not. I guess you don't know if anyone does, but she had some suicide attempts. And so it was a long 15 years. And then I ended up leaving halfway through my senior year of high school and went to live with my grandparents, and that kind of ripped it all wide open because, we don't, kind of like calling you today, we don't air laundry or skeletons in public, and most people wouldn't have known if, I guess if they just didn't really, really know us or anything. I guess we were good at keeping our business in the house.
Wow. And so what happened in your marriage?
Honestly, maybe I wasn't mentally prepared for it. Does that make sense? I ended up.
I don't think any of us are mentally prepared for marriage.
I don't know. I think we got pregnant before we got married, and so I think we got married trying to do the right thing. And I've listened to some of your other shows, and I kind of, in my 30s now, he and I are civil. We've done great at co-parenting. We've been divorced for 7 or 8 years now. We did not, it was kind of like having an extra child, and I had just enough for me and my kids, and that's not really an excuse. I know I played a part in it, but I don't know. I guess my focus too, and that sounds awful too, at the time I wasn't focused on being the best spouse ever. I was just, from my childhood on, if I ever had kids, I wanted to make sure that I was better than the hand I was dealt. And we had a rough go, and I didn't want to be one of those people that stayed in a miserable marriage like my parents are 25 years later.
Gotcha. So. And thanks for sharing that. So give me a rundown of the last 6-7 years. What's that been like?
Well, it was kind of, I guess, getting divorced kind of added stress, but it was also a relief at the same time. I was standing on my own 2 feet. I have 2 great girls. They're now both at that preteen puberty age, which has been really fun. But like I said, I've worked really hard, even, getting pregnant in college. My kids are 11 months apart. So, I did really good planning that as well. But I never took time off. I finished college. I have a full-time job. I'm a manager. I do great. My kids see that I work hard. I am recently diagnosed with ADD, which makes sense a lot for some
Welcome
of the other
to the
things. Welcome to the gang,
yo.
Bored.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I got bored, a couple of years into my divorce and decided I needed a second degree. because, school and work and everything wasn't enough. I needed something else to like keep me going. So they've seen me, work hard for everything I do. That's important. I try to make their world as safe and calm as possible. But I guess my grandma died a few years ago, and I guess that's kind of random, but she was my rock in the world. She knew all of the pain I was going through, and I could come to her. There was no judgment. She was my person in my life who, told me she was proud of me, told me she loved me. There was no manipulation or anything else, or I never worried about going, to her house or like, my house. I did everything I could to get out of it. And so, but she passed away a few years ago, and that was kind of I don't know. It was like something clicked, and I realized I didn't have anyone to lean on anymore. And my parents are still in my life, but I draw very hard boundaries. And even when I try to reach out, medical issues come up, things with my kids, other stuff, it's just a repeated disappointment, if that makes sense. So I have this gap in my life. And growing up, I was, in survival mode constantly, so it didn't really affect me now. But the further I get away from that, the more it tries to resurface. So, my only tool apparently in my tool belt is this rusty old shovel because I bury everything.
Yeah.
And now every time it rains in my life a little, it's just all coming to the surface. And so I'm trying to find healthy ways without, dropping a jug of milk, on the floor and then just having a meltdown, because that's not realistic, and that's not why I'm, having a meltdown. So.
Yes. So first and foremost, you are so brave. Like, I'd hug you I'd ask you, but I'd hug you if you were sitting here. Like, you've been through it, and you're working so hard. It's so admirable how you are. You're standing at the helm of that ship, and you are leaning on it to turn the thing around so hard. And you have been for so long, and it's admirable how you're using your strength. It's so good. So you said you've been in flight since when you were a little kid, just constantly on the go. And what I would tell you is, after talking to you for 3 minutes, your engine runs hot. Is that fair?
It does.
And so I wrote down a few things you said. You're providing a safe, calm world for your daughters. I'm just going to make some guesses here. Does your safe and calm come through organization and cleanliness and routine?
Planning. Yes, planning. I spring clean 15 times a year, where people probably think I'm compulsive, but my parents were also hoarders too, and it's just, I have to have I'm not like a mean controlling person. I just have to know what's going on for it to, flow.
Okay, so number one, you're still in fight or flight, and you have been for, how old are you, 31?
32, yeah.
32, so you have been for about 30 years. Okay. And in counseling, we call it leakage, which is you can deal with this stuff or it will deal with you. And it usually picks the most inopportune times. Like you say, like it's just, I'm making cereal for my daughter and I drop the milk. And all of a sudden, 6 minutes later, I'm on the floor and I can't breathe. And I have an 11-year-old looking at me thinking, like asking, what happened to mommy, right? Or you're prepping for a work presentation, or are you always almost late? Or are you always on time?
I try to be on time.
See,
but,
I knew it. You were almost
really
always late.
We're pushing, we're pushing down the barrel, which it doesn't help that my job is a little flexible. So it's not that I have to punch the clock as long as I'm there within like a ballpark time.
Let's keep it going, because now you're making me feel like I'm smarter than I am. And then when you're at work, sometimes you have entire blocks where you just stare off into space, or you will YouTube down a rabbit hole. And then
I will.
in a few hours after your kids go to bed, you will get more done, and it will be outstanding work. And then your bosses love you.
Day, but
and then you get mad at yourself, like, why can't I just do this during the day? It's so ridiculous. And then you loop back, and then the whole thing starts over. You are, here's my guess. My guess is the little girl in you stood between mom and an abusive guy, and she tried to fight.
Yeah.
And she learned at an early age that her muscles were little and her voice was little. And she saw what happens when her mom, who's the model for a woman in her life, stands up to a guy. It ends really badly. And you shifted from fighting to running. And when you have a traumatic childhood, when you have a traumatic adulthood, which a divorce is, I know it happens all the time, and we underappreciate how heavy it is. Even like you said, you can finally breathe for the first time. You stood up on your own 2 feet, but you're actually anchored to somebody else. And when that somebody else passed away, you realized, oh no, I'm totally untethered. Then we just start running, and we run through achievement, we run through accomplishment, we burn through relationships, and we are always exhausted, right? And then you said this. Here's the other part. And this is a common thing with ADHD folks. This is a common thing with, I think ADHD is just a marker of childhood chaos. You still have this fantasy that you're holding out for. That one day I'm going to call mom and dad and they're going to say the right things that mom and dads are supposed to say when they have a sick grandkid or when their daughter's exhausted. Even how you said, oh, this is kind of random, but my grandma died. It's super not random. But when you're running from everything, you have to just let it. It's like you're sprinting and your buddy gets picked off by the tiger. You're like, well, I got to keep going. Because is that fair?
Yes, it is. It is. And I do get burned out. And there are times where it's like, I don't know, like you're saying, I'm not tethered. I'm blowing freely in the wind. And I know people look around me and I don't really know what normal is, but they're not running on my level. And they're like, why do you need this? Why do you act like that? They'll look at me and, are you okay? What is okay? I'm fine. I'm here. I'm not.
And hey, here's the other thing. We live in a culture that rewards that. I can outwork you. I can work longer than you. I can turn in better stuff and quicker stuff and more aggressive stuff. And I can be louder and direct and cool and great and super fun. And then when I collapse, that's on my own time. And my paycheck goes up, my promotions go up, my performance goes up. And inside my I haven't changed the oil in 30 years. And 8 years is a long time to be lonely too, as a 31-year-old with 2 little girls. And I heard an attorney say this once. I was working with some attorneys, and one of them said this, and I had a friend, and she had the same exact experience. And here's my guess on you. The attorney, we were talking about stuff, and he said, I feel like if I ever cried, if I just stopped and cried, I would never be able to stop. And my question to you is, if you ever just stopped for a minute and exhaled, and thought about grandma, and thought about 5-year-old Jennifer standing between mom and this complete buffoon of a human, and 9-year-old Jennifer wondering what was so wrong with Jennifer that mom won't talk to me. And man, I miss grandma. And again, I miss grandma. If you ever slow down and sat in that for a minute, or just as I'm explaining that, tell me what you're feeling.
I'm flashing honestly to there's times and, I haven't found somebody, definitive to talk to. And I guess that's why I'm coming to you today, because listening to your podcast gives some kind of clarity. But I've had moments in the last few months or years even that, it's like I'll be scrubbing the bathroom and I start crying. And I did. I ran out. It was like the anniversary of my grandma dying. And I went and sat on the porch for an hour and a half, which thankfully my kids weren't there. So I had the freedom to do that. But there are times where if I let it flow, then it's like I can't pull myself back out for a couple days.
Yeah.
And I guess I need to, but I in my head, I can't afford to just sit and do that because I have kids that depend on me and don't understand, all the things that I've seen in my life and the things I hope they never see. And so it's just hard, I guess, to
I'm going to tell you something, but you're going to have to promise me. You have to promise that you're not going to internalize it.
Okay.
Okay? You promise?
I promise.
Say, put your hand over your heart, liar. I'm just kidding, you're not a liar. Put your hand over your heart and then say, I promise.
I promise.
Okay. Our kids, I'm a runner too. And that's, I'm trying to sound like I'm all smart. All those things I just said is because I live that. Okay. I'm a runner, big time. And one of the most jarring and important moments of my life was when I came to realize that I can do things for my kids and I can tell them things, but they absorb that internal tension. They absorb it as though it is the blood flowing through their veins. And they also see me smile, concoct a smile when inside my heart's racing 1,000 miles an hour because I'm anxious and I didn't sleep last night because I was thinking about this thing that happened a long time ago. And here we go. And they see me smile and they see me make breakfast and they feel that's not him. There's a gap. And so what I would tell you is now, often when I'd say that, you're going to look in the mirror and internalize it and say, I'm a bad mom. I'm screwing up my daughters. The same thing. I'm creating patterns, all that stuff. Don't do that. Okay. You are working so hard. All this is now is a matter of energy transference. Okay. You said you've got 2 daughters that you got to take care of. You got to make sure they don't have X, Y, and Z. The greatest gift you can give them is a vulnerable mom. Is a mom that shows them what grieving looks like. That when you cry, they get to see that. And they get to see, hey, it's okay to cry. And then we smile. And then we go get ice cream. Or then we all go for a walk. Or then we go get up and do our next thing. Because what happens is they're going to cry one day and they're going to have no model for it. Something will happen. As much as we don't want something to happen to our kids, something will happen to our kids. And if they've never seen us do it, experience it, be honest about it, bring them into that, it happens to them and they end up on an island. And they think, man, my mom handled it like that, or dad was able to do this. And they don't know. So the greatest gift you can give your daughters is, if they're young, obviously you're not going to tell them the full extent, but letting them know, man, childhood was really hard. It was hard growing up. And I miss my daddy. And I really miss grandma. And sometimes I cry because I miss grandma. It makes me so, so sad. I've had a family member pass away very, very recently. And the question I asked my wife today when I was making plane arrangements to go to the funeral was, I want to take one of my kids with me. I want them to see that. And so we're talking about how we get them out of school and all this, but that's how important it has become to me. So the greatest gift, hear me say this, the greatest gift you can give to your kid is you. And what you're doing right now is running as hard as you can so that nobody can actually see you. You're trying to create shiny things and markers and medals and trophies so they can point to those things, because somewhere along the way you got the message that Jennifer has very little value. And that, to answer your original question, that's where the healing from childhood trauma starts. That Jennifer's got value, warts and all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I know that's heavy, right? So to answer your original question in some detail, dude, yes, you for sure can heal. For sure. Asking that question is step number 1. Step number 2 is the hardest thing for somebody with a sick. Let's back up. The ACEs score is not mine. I wish I was that smart. I am not that smart. That's Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris and a whole trauma researchers that came up with that. She's brilliant. But it's a 10, for those who are listening, it's a 10 question scale that just rates childhood trauma. And what we know is if you have a 4 or higher on this scale, and it's everything from, you were in a household of divorce, did you see abuse to somebody that in your immediate household go to jail, were you around addiction and things like that. Some things that we would think would be benign, or some things that when you add them up, it's this cumulative nature. If you have a 4 or higher, it's when you get into some really bizarre correlations, causative correlations, right? They're not even correlations, they're causation. You see an increase in cancers, and you see an increase in strokes, an increase in heart attacks, things that you would never, like this happened as a kid and people get cancer more? That's weird. And what they're finding is our bodies stay in these inflamed states for years and years and years and years. They're fighting and running and freezing from everything. And until we can, let our bodies know that right now we're safe, right now we're okay, it will continue to fight for us and fight for us and fight for us and fight for us year after year after year later. And that sounds like woo-woo. It's not. In fact, the ACEs work, the trauma work has just been extraordinary. So step number 1 for you, and this is going to be the hardest one. When you grew up in an abusive relationship or with neglect, one of those 2 narratives told you something about relationships and your role in them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you are abused physically, sexually, if you are abused, you get a very clear message about your worth, your body's worth, your space in the world's worth. And you learn that people are not safe. Or if you're neglected, if mom is an addict, mom is going through her own physical or mental health challenges, you are on the back burner all the time. She's too caught up in her new marriage, or she's an abuser, whatever the thing is. If there's neglect, then the child gets a very clear message that I am less than, I don't have value. These other things are more important than me. And then kids will spend the rest of their life trying to solve for what was wrong with me. You had both, right?
Yes.
And so the really challenging part here is the only thing that helps that healing process is relationships. And for someone in your position, those were the things that hurt you. So my guess is have you tried a counselor and you go once or twice, or you talk to a pastor or a friend once or twice and then you bail out?
Yeah. I don't know if it's because if it's me making excuses or it just doesn't line up, or
Yes.
there's ones where I've tried to, hey, let's unpack the past, and they're like, well, let's just focus on right now, or let's not worry about your mom or anything else. So then I don't know. I had one tell me before that I was just bored and I needed to pick up an art class or something. So.
Oh man. See, I was having a good time on this show, and now you got me all raged out because I can't stand terrible counselors. No, I'm just kidding. It's not you. It's just I can't. The courage it takes to go see a counselor, to go see a psychologist, it takes so much courage to go. And if you get some nonsensical moron like that tells you things like that, it makes my blood boil, because you can lose somebody. And when you lose somebody with two little kids, you can lose a generation. Right? That's why it's so important for counselors to know what in the world they're doing. It drives me crazy. Jennifer, I'm sorry on behalf of all therapists in the country. I'm sorry that happened to you. That should not have happened. I would recommend looking for someone trained in childhood trauma and a trauma therapist in your local area. And it will be expensive, and it will be worth every penny you pay for it. And I would let them know your past, and I would probably spend some time writing this down. 2 or 3 or 4 or 6 or 10 pages, however much comes out. But telling your story so that when you get in that room, you have so many defense mechanisms and so many diversion techniques to deal with relationships. It's how you've gotten this far. You'll be able to read it and say, here's what I'm dealing with. And here's who I need somebody to walk alongside me. And let's draw some connections to nowadays. But the answer is yes, finding somebody to talk to, finding someone to walk alongside. And then you're going to begin to feel these things as they happen. And what will happen over time is you'll drop the milk and you will feel it come over your body, and you'll instantly be able to back out of it and say, what is this response? Why is my body responding like this? That feels weird. It's curiosity instead of judgment, right? And slowly practicing that. Some of it will be with trauma work, whether that's EMDR, whether that is, somatic positioning. There's all these different ways that you can work that trauma out of your body, but it's held up in there. And some of it will be talking. Some of it will be doing some hard trauma work. Some will be doing some writing. Some of it will be doing some practicing relationships, maybe groups, maybe taking your daughters and doing X number of things. Some of it will be being really vulnerable. And it will be really scary for you, because vulnerability got you hurt a lot, right?
Yeah.
And some of it will be meditation, so you can learn how to control your thoughts. So when they start to take over, you can walk it back. And what I'll tell you, that's probably the part that you believe the least. And I'm telling you, as someone who's walked this journey, now it's just remarkable how you can just back up. I can back way up real quick. And that's just years of just sitting and working in it. You're 31. My guess is if you make this a priority and you say, Mom's going to get well, and I'm going to raise 2 daughters who are not only strong and powerful and able to defend themselves, but who know how to laugh until their guts hurt. And they know how to dance like bananas. And they know how to be strong and negotiate. And they know how to weep bitterly. And they know how to grieve. I'm going to raise those kind of daughters because I'm going to learn those skills. So instead of thinking about this as you're broken and you got to get fixed, think of this as I'm 31. I'm going to spend the next 2, 3, 4 years learning a whole bunch of new skills. And in the process of learning those skills, your body will reconnect with itself. and you will be able to sleep with no medication. You'll be able to sleep without having to scroll through Instagram or watch 5 Netflix shows. You'll be able to date without worrying, am I good enough for this moron, whatever goofball sitting across from you at whatever table? And you'll be able to laugh when you drop the milk instead of fall apart. Does that sound like, how does that sound?
That sounds, well, everything you described is exactly me. But yeah, that would be incredible because, I try, but there are times where I know I fall short, and I've made an effort I apologize to my kids anytime, if I get a short temper or, my patience runs out or something, I always come back and apologize and tell them, it's not you. Mommy loves you. I promise, I'm working through or doing whatever. So I do try. I probably don't do it as much as I need to, but I do try even a little bit to be vulnerable with them because I want them to know that it's okay to have feelings.
Only an extraordinary, brave woman with an ACEs score of 6 would turn forgiveness into a tally mark or a performance. only Jennifer, not only Jennifer, only a extraordinary, powerful, strong, brilliant woman who's got an ACEs score of 6 would say, no, I do. I tell my daughters that I ask for their forgiveness and I tell them I'm sorry. But I could probably do it better, and I'll start working harder at making forgiveness more of a thing, and I'm going to make a chart, and then here's what I want Jennifer to do tonight, okay? I want you to, number one, before this week is over, I want you to have made a call and an appointment with somebody in your area who specializes in trauma. Okay? And you can Google that. You can look at Psychology Today. You can look at any number of places. You can ask somebody at work. Find a trauma counselor in your area, and I want you to go see him. You don't have to go see him this week, but I want there to be something on the books. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to write a letter to 8-year-old Jennifer or 7-year-old Jennifer and start with, Dear 7-year-old Jennifer, my God, you're so beautiful. And I want you to describe what she's wearing. And then I want you to let her know this isn't her fault. And it wasn't her job to defend mom. It wasn't her job to stand up to an abusive husband. It wasn't her fault that dad left. And I want you to let that girl go play. She's still working. And I want you to let her know she can clock out and go play. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to do that?
Yes.
Do you promise?
Absolutely. I promise.
All right.
Hand over my heart.
You have to. I knew it, liar. I'm just kidding. You're not a liar. I don't know why I'm calling you a liar. You're not a liar at all. It just sounds like so dismissive and ridiculous. When you write yourself that letter, don't send it, but you have to. This is the rules. You got to send a note to Kelly that said, I did my homework.
Okay.
Cool. And after your first appointment, I want you to write us back and let us know how it went. And it will probably be rough, especially if you write something that you can read to the counselor there. It's going to get past all of your weapons and all of your diversion techniques. And if you are a person who's had an abusive childhood or who's got a high ACEs score, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you're walking to a credit room and just direct traffic because it keeps them from looking at you. To anybody listening, number one, recognize Jennifer for the brave soul that she is. For everyone listening, it is never too late to heal from trauma. Ever, ever, ever. That's why I do this show. It's never too late. 72, 52, 22, 10. It's never too late to heal from trauma. Ever. And it starts with looking in the mirror and saying, I'm losing control of my breath and my sleep. It's probably time. I want more for myself. This is the magic word, I want peace. Jennifer, you're an absolute rock star. Thanks for calling, and we'll walk alongside with you. I hope that we can stay connected for the next year or two as you walk through this. And I can't wait to meet Jennifer in person on the back end of this when she's going to bed with no medicine and getting up with only 1 cup of coffee. It's going to be great.